And we're live, we're back.
There we go.
Okay, so we're gonna finish up this section. We got a couple of slides left. Again, we're looking at the economic aspects that led to liberalism. Right now we're gonna discuss colonialism and imperialism. So, particularly in European history, for your curriculum, we look at colonialism, which began roughly around 1492 when they started colonizing. Actually, they didn't start colonizing until the 1600s, 1700s. 1492 is when Europeans started coming across the ocean into North America. Doesn't mean that they hadn't spread into other areas already. You know, if you take a look at the map at the back of the classroom, if you look at the right side of the world over there, you'll see how Africa, Asia, Europe, all these continents are connected together, which means that it was already easy for people to travel around and interact and exchange ideas and goods and services and materials.
Does that include exploits too?
Yes, to an extent. To an extent.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas North and South America, there's a giant ocean. Does anyone have a guess? How long do you think it took Europeans to sail across the ocean?
About 6 months.
No. They'd all die in 6 months. How long? Anyone?
A year. A month or two.
A month or two. Yeah, 6 weeks. Not months, 6 weeks. Okay, so it took about 6 weeks to go from anywhere in Europe on the coast, sailing across to North America, and then obviously if you want to go South America, go down. It takes a lot of time. So, anyways, you had the discovery of the New World in 1492. Just go around. Just or do that. In 1492, they are expanding their territory, so they're expanding their available resources. And I was actually listening to a podcast on this, so related to resources. You know, if we have a lot of, let's say, what's a valuable resource, first of all? Well, actually, better yet, what are resources? Something that we can use. Okay, what's a valuable resource? You already said one back there. Who's not listening anymore? I can't say your names on the camera. I was told not to do that.
Oh, gold.
Gold. Gold is an incredibly valuable resource. And it's an incredibly rare, well, it's rare, but it's a very practical, useful substance. Okay. So is gold worth a lot of money when it's in the ground?
Yeah.
Yes and no, right? Right now we value gold, but if it's all the way deep down, can you get it?
No.
Like if it's under the school, can we just start digging? Not quite, right? You need to get the gold, you need to extract it out of the ground, then it has value because you can sell it. And so, when Europeans came to North America, they realized there's all these abundant resources like timber, so that's trees, there's a lot of fish. There's a quote, I remember hearing this when I was a student, that there was a journal entry, this European person mentioned that when their boats came to North America, there were so many fish in some of the rivers that the boats started getting lifted out of the water a bit. They just started getting elevated. It's not just like the boat was on top of the fish, but there was an abundant amount of resources available to be extracted out of North America. Okay. Anyway, specifically though, colonialism is the creation of settlements on distant territories and lands. So, you know, European, when we look at history in grade 10, globalization, when the Europeans showed up on the east coast of Canada, they didn't necessarily stay there right away. First, they just made trips. They found all these resources, they extracted them, then they went back to Europe, sold them, and created more commotion regarding this new world that they had discovered. It wasn't until around the 1500s, 1600s where they started leaving people behind to survive, to settle, to have some sort of established territory from the mother country, whether it was England, France, Spain, Portugal, whichever country. Imperialism is the dominating force of one group over another, particularly with distance between the two. So, imperialism exists when the British Empire claims North America for itself and rules over it from a distance. You know, obviously you can't bring all of England over to Canada. So the British king has to rule over the people who are living in this area, and that's imperialism. Okay. But those are two of the practical economic systems and social systems that existed before liberalism. Okay. The economic system, to be specific, that was utilized before capitalism and liberalism came into place was called mercantilism. This was used in Europe from the 15th to the 18th century. So that's the 1400s to the 1700s. And mercantilism, the way it functions is that it is essentially, so the nation's goal is to collect as much gold and silver as possible. Again, we already highlighted, gold is a very valuable substance. Has anyone, out of curiosity, anyone ever seen like an ounce of gold, a gold coin? I have, right? It's once you've seen processed gold, like not in jewelry form, like an actual solid gold, it's very easy to understand why people wanted to collect it. It's very shiny, it's very interesting, it's just a very unique metal. And I was just listening to a podcast this morning talking about it. Like, gold is a very pure metal. It doesn't mix with other things quite well. It doesn't rust, it doesn't corrode. And then nowadays, like our processors, so your cell phone has what's called a processor inside it. Those processors are made out of gold. Okay, and they help the cell phone to function. Anyways, naturally, once you've seen a piece of gold or silver, has anyone seen silver? Bit of that, again, very shiny metal object. It's like you can get obsessed looking at these things. It makes sense that these countries want to amass as much of that. Okay. And there's some stuff in the grade 10 curriculum I'm learning more about that relates to, our economic systems at one point used to emphasize actually owning physical gold to represent how strong your currency, your dollar was. We don't quite do that anymore. Anyways, this third paragraph here tells you the specifics of mercantilism. So you're maximizing exports, so you want to sell things. So ideally you take in raw material. So that could be like you cut down a tree. You process it, so you cut it up into pieces of lumber, timber, whatever it is, whatever 2x4s, and then you sell that. That's your export. That's what mercantilism is about. Rather than trading, buying and selling, and letting competition exist to see who can do this the best, the process is that, we want to take all the raw materials from our colonies, from the territory that we have, bring it to us, process it, and then send it back as a full and proper manufactured item. Right, so for example, like clothes, you have materials that are grown, that are put together into the manner of clothing, and you buy clothes. Like you don't buy unless you crochet or stitch or yarn, whatever it is. You buy a finished product. Okay. They minimize imports, so buying fully made products by increasing taxes. So if you want to buy a finished product from some other country, before it gets into your country, they're going to put a big tax on that, make it very expensive, right? Make it less appealing to buy. My friends who are Brazilian, they were mentioning to me that cars in Brazil are very expensive. You pay almost as much in taxes as you do for the car. So if the car sale is $40,000, you pay almost $40,000 in taxes, right? It's some sort of luxury tax, but part of it is because it's difficult to import cars into Brazil, right? They have taxes set up for that. Also, Brazil is very socialist and, I don't know, some weird ideas of who should own a car, whatever. Okay. But also a lot of other reasons, not my own personal preferences there. Okay, the emphasis is on buying local goods. So if you live in England, if you live in Canada, you should buy products that are produced there, right? This is all about mercantilism. One point here that I should put in bold is that in mercantilism, the market system was controlled almost entirely by the government or the king. Okay, so it's very centrally planned from the top down. The king decides what will be bought, what you need more of, what is sold, rather than individuals making those decisions. Right, and this is a little bit more abstract than we need to get into right now. Okay, so some takeaways from this lesson 2. So classical liberalism is developing from a variety of sources, not just one specific person, not just one specific country or city where these ideas, where these methods are being developed and being thought through. Right, again, coming back to our logical, rational thinking, It's most commonly agreed that John Locke is the father of liberalism. So again, if you don't know what his ideas were, go back into the notes just a couple slides ago. The writings of Locke directly and indirectly set the outline, and then other philosophers after him came in to fill in the details. Okay, unfortunately, I don't remember yesterday's lesson, so I can't give you all the details on John Locke. You have feudalism as the social structure, and you have mercantilism as the economic delivery system prior to liberalism, which is essentially coming to an end because they're too restrictive on the economy. So mercantilism, you're not allowed to just buy and sell with whoever you want. You're not allowed to compete freely. And with feudalism, there's just not enough freedom of the individual. You know, if you're born a peasant, your life's probably going to suck. If you're born a noble, your life will probably be good unless you screw up spending your money or you piss off the king, right? Which would likely result in your death. So these two systems, feudalism and mercantilism, but particularly mercantilism on the economic side, they reduce competition, they make us worse off, right? There's less trade, there's less competition, which means that there's less innovation and less job opportunities, right? Some of you may, there's about 35 of you in this class. 1 or 2 of you may decide at some point to go and work in a different country. Several of you may switch provinces and work there and live there, and you're free to do that. Many of you are likely going to, at one point, try living in Edmonton or Calgary, right? You want to go to more population-dense places because there's more opportunities for you there. Some of you may not, right? Some of you may like where you're at and what you're doing. This is just a wrap-up slide putting the isms together. So mercantilism, imperialism, and colonialism come together to produce economic turmoil great enough to cause an economic liberation. Okay, basically what that means is that the people are upset at the way their life is going, and there is an uprising socially and economically. Whenever the lesson finishes, there's always going to be a takeaway slide and some other slide to wrap up the information. If you ever are confused on the lesson and what to take away from it, focus on those slides. Okay. Imperialism allows for more raw materials. More raw materials used productively means that you have more economic output. Okay, simple way to understand that is, particularly with basketball. Most of you should know Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant was known as a three-point scorer, but there are many games where he'd put up 30, 40 shots and only get 10, 15 in. But again, because he's putting up 40 shots, everything's a percentage, he just has more points scored. If you put up 2 shots, like you shoot twice in basketball, and you miss both, well, you put up no points on the board. So similarly, if you're productive and efficient, those raw materials can be used for something. Whereas if you're not productive and efficient, the raw materials just get left out there. Think about it this way. Many of you probably know someone who farms, grows food in some way or another, or deals with a farm. If the farmer plants all the seeds but then doesn't go and sow the field and collect their harvest, well, what's going to happen? It's just going to rot away. All that productivity, all that work is just going to decay. On the social side, you have a division of people, so new social cultures are able to form and flourish. Also, when you have more people, there's more division of society. There's different things that people can do, different niches that they can fill. That's a biology term. Hopefully you understand that. Okay. What else do we want to say? Some of the problems that mercantilism creates, to be specific, is high tariffs, so a lot of taxes, especially if you're bringing an item into your country. There's restrictions on what people can buy and sell, who can buy and sell. Taxes and overbearing regulations on the colonial market. So part of the reason why the Americans had a revolution and resisted the English king was because they didn't like the way they were being taxed. For that matter, Americans to this day still don't like being taxed. And like, fair enough, you know, there's a very common belief that taxation is theft. If you spend your waking hours working, why should anyone else be able to take that money from you? So this idea that controlling the goods and services bought and sold and amassing as much wealth, hoarding as much wealth, will limit your individual economic freedom, and it reduces the amount of competition between people. And again, for liberalism, the reason why we keep harping on competition is because it's believed that competition brings out the best product, the best service. If you have two mechanics and one of them shows up every day 9 a.m., leaves at 4 p.m., and you know that, hey, I need to get my car fixed, you know that they're going to be in that shop during those times, that means they're reliable. The other mechanic, some days, you know, he's there, some days he's not there, he's not reliable. Those two people are competing with one another for the customers. And the one who's more reliable is more likely to get more customers. Now let's say the reliable guy, you know, he's always there, but he does a terrible job. You know, half the time your car leaves making more noises than it went in with. Right? Maybe then that affects and impacts how much people go to him because he's not competing well. He's not very effective at his job. I don't really need to share that last blurb there, which takes us to our lesson 2 questions and the end of this lesson.